Hey guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today I'll be reviewing Sound of Freedom. So I have to say right away, I am aware that there's some baggage with this film, but I went into it just watching it as a movie, not thinking about anything surrounding the actual creation of the film or the people involved. So if you want to, talk about that or you want to go off on that in the comments, feel free. That's just not something I'll be touching on in this review. So this film is based on true events. It tells the story of Tim Ballard, a man who is on a mission to stop human trafficking. He gets caught up in this big human trafficking ring in South America. And it tells his story of trying to take down some of the big players in those regions and save the children. I will say this movie is not an easy watch. It is very heavy. It is very dark, and it deals with kind of the darkest parts of humanity and everything that goes along with that. There are some gut-wrenching and heartbreaking scenes dealing with the abuse of children. So that's something to know going into this movie. If that is something that, you cannot handle watching or you do not want to see, this probably isn't the movie for you. But I will say that it is kind of an important story to be told, and it shines a spotlight on something that is really, really bad that's happening in this world. And those atrocities are really highlighted in the performances, particularly of the young actors. I can only imagine how hard it is to play this role, and I think they did a great job of showing kind of the trauma that goes along with these experiences and putting kind of the audience in the seat of these children and how bad this really is. I think the movie is a little heavy-handed at times, but when you're dealing with such serious and dark events, I think it almost has to be. You can't really use the kids' gloves with things like human trafficking or child abuse. It is bad, and it just is what it is. Jim Caviezel does a solid job as our main character in this story. He has to play someone who's really broken by their experiences, someone who has a family and cares very deeply about children, about his role in society, but then kind of struggling against the bureaucracy, what's going on, struggling against kind of the darker forces of this world, and him trying to kind of skirt that line between light and darkness. I think he does a pretty good job. Particularly in the first act of the film, you're really seeing him break down as an individual. I think his performance later on isn't as strong as that first act, but he really does do a pretty great job. Bill Camp has a great supporting role as Vampiro, who's an individual that teams up with our main character down in South America and helps to bring down this big trafficking ring. So I do think he does a great job of adding almost a little levity to this film, if you can even call it that. He's kind of a less serious character, but he brings kind of a very real world feel to this role. I will say at times the dialogue feels a little stilted and again a little heavy-handed, a little on the nose, but I do think it works for what it's trying to do with this story. The movie also does suffer a little bit from pacing issues. It makes it feel quite long. It is just over 2 hours long, but it feels probably about half an hour longer than that. And it's kind of due to the rising and falling action. We kind of have a climax about halfway through the film that feels like a natural ending, but it isn't really where the film ends, and it kind of continues towards another climax. I know when you're dealing with real life events and kind of a true story, you're trying to tell the true events, and sometimes that doesn't make for a perfect narrative, so I can forgive it a little bit for that, but it does feel a touch long. Filmmaking itself is pretty conventional. It's not particularly bad. It's not particularly good. It's kind of the middle of the road when it comes to kind of your cinematography and your filming style. I do think it captures the settings that it's going for, whether it be in South America or, America. It kind of captures what they're going for there, but it's nothing that's really going to blow you away. I think where this movie really excels is trying to get its message across about human trafficking and tell a true story and really, pull out the heart of those watching this film and make you really understand the atrocities that are happening on like an everyday basis. And I think in all those things, it really does excel. So it accomplishes what it's trying to do. And like I said, it is not an easy watch. And they even reference in the film why people don't talk about, human trafficking opposed to drug trafficking or gun trafficking, because it is a tough subject. It's hard to talk about. It's difficult to imagine, particularly as an American who maybe hasn't experienced the atrocities of human trafficking. We see gun violence and, drug crimes and all these things every day, but it isn't at your doorstep. So the movie kind of throws you into the middle of all these events to make you really feel what these people are going through. So if I were to rate Sound of Freedom, I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. Again, I think it really accomplishes what it sets out to do on a messaging standpoint. On a filmmaking standpoint, it is a little bit weaker, but I don't know if really that's something I can knock too much for this film. So if you end up checking out this movie, let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and see you guys next time.